The Mental Edge. Mastering the Inner Game to Conquer Life's Challenges, written by Ronnie Rowland. Published by Growth Literacy Lounge. Some battles don't leave bruises. They don't show up on scans, no headlines. No warning sirens. Just quiet wars waged in the back rooms of your mind, before sunrise in traffic, between meetings, while staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m. This book is for those battles. It's not about hype or hustle. Not about pretending everything's fine while your thoughts spiral and your confidence crumbles. This is about the part of success nobody claps for, the discipline behind your eyes. Every challenge you face, career, relationships, setbacks, reinventions, demands action. But what drives that action is mindset, and most people try to change their lives without changing how they think. They build goals on shaky inner ground, then wonder why everything falls apart. Within these pages, you'll build a new default, one that doesn't panic under pressure, doesn't flinch at rejection, and doesn't wait for confidence to appear before moving forward. This is about becoming the kind of person who can handle the heat, not just talk about it. You'll learn how to silence the critic and amplify the coach, how to pause instead of react, how to use fear as fuel, how to show up sharp, focused, and unshaken, even when life gets loud. This book is your starting line, not because you're weak, but because you're done letting your strongest muscle go untrained. Each chapter is a mental rep, not motivational fluff, but strategic, story-driven insights that hardwire resilience. You'll finish every section with tools, takeaways, and one micro-action step to turn knowledge into power. You won't always feel ready. That's fine. You won't always get it perfect. That's expected. The only requirement is this: show up, breathe, train the mind. Because if you win the inner game, the outer one becomes strategy, not survival. Let's get to work. Chapter 1. The Invisible Battle. There's a story about two warriors, same mission, same battlefield. One returned broken, the other sharpened. The difference wasn't their armor, it was their mind. You wake up and the war has already begun. Not the one outside, with deadlines, traffic, bills, but the silent one inside your head. That whisper telling you you're not ready, that flash of doubt when you open your inbox. That punch of anxiety in your gut when something goes sideways. It's easy to think life is hard because life is hard. But more often, life feels impossible because your inner world is in chaos. Most people never see it. They feel it, sure, tight chest, racing thoughts, low energy, but they don't name the battle. And what you don't name, you can't win. Think of your mind like a command center. Every reaction, every choice, every impulse starts there. If the command center is shaky, the mission fails. The problem is, most people leave it unguarded. They let every fear march in unchallenged. They let past failures take the mic. They hand over the keys to whoever's loudest in the moment. Stress, shame, overwhelm. But here's the truth: the mind, left untrained, becomes a saboteur. The mind, trained, becomes a weapon. This is the inner game, and whether you know it or not, you're playing it every day. The stakes. Your focus, your peace, your potential. The scoreboard? Not followers, not paychecks, resilience. The ability to rise, adapt, and lead your life with intention when everything screams chaos. Some try to out-hustle the pain. Others numb it, scrolling, snacking, snapping at people who don't deserve it. But those who master the inner game? They do something different. They pause. They observe. They choose. Not perfectly. Not without struggle, but consistently, intentionally. This isn't about suppressing emotion or pretending to be bulletproof. It's about learning to navigate the storm without becoming it. The mentally strong feel everything and still steer the ship. You've likely heard of elite performers, athletes, even special forces who visualize success, control their breathing, and rehearse high-stakes moments in their minds. It's not magic, it's mental discipline, and you don't need a uniform or a gold medal to claim it. You just need to start. Because here's what they've learned: when you control your mind doesn't control you. When you stop believing every thought and start questioning them, you create space. In that space, you find power. The power to respond instead of react, to anchor in truth instead of spiraling in stories. Most people never get this edge. They chase hacks and hustle harder, never realizing the real bottleneck is between their ears. But not you. You're here. And that means you're ready to stop fighting shadows and start building strength. This book won't hand you motivation. It's not a cheerleader. It's a training manual. Each chapter is a rep. Each insight is a tool. And if you're willing to put in the mental work, the transformation won't just be possible, it'll be inevitable. You don't need to fix everything today. You just need to decide the real fight is in here, and it's one you can win. Now that you've seen the battlefield, it's time to sharpen your blade. The true battle is internal, not external. An untrained mind sabotages, a trained mind empowers. Mastering your mindset is the foundation of lasting resilience. Where in your life are you letting the inner battle go unnamed and unchallenged? Tonight, write down 3 recurring thoughts that drain your energy. For each, ask, is this true? Is this helpful? Chapter 2. Mind as a weapon. Imagine a world-class archer at the Olympics. Her hands are steady, her breath slow. She draws the bow, locks on the target, and releases. But here's the catch: the arrow doesn't fly from the string, it flies from her focus. Her body obeys the mind. And that mind? It's been trained for years, not just to aim, but to ignore the noise. Your mind is your bow. And most people fire wildly, wondering why they miss. They don't realize their thinking is scattered, reactive, untrained. Then they blame the world, the timing, the odds. But it's not the bow's fault. It's the archer's focus. In a distracted age, focus is a superpower. Not the fake kind where you white-knuckle through tasks with caffeine and tight jaws. Real focus is quiet power. It's choosing where your attention goes, and more importantly, where it doesn't. Here's the problem: attention is leaking everywhere. Notifications, worries, unfinished loops in your mind. Your brain becomes like a crowded room with everyone yelling, "Look at me," and you're trying to concentrate in that chaos. Good luck. Your thoughts are weapons or weaknesses. Think of a sniper, still, locked in, waiting for the shot, not because he's slow, but because he's deliberate. Your mind needs that same discipline. Not just to avoid distractions, but to channel energy where it counts. That begins with awareness. You can't focus what you don't notice. Start paying attention to where your mind goes when it's unguarded. Is it spiraling into what ifs? Replaying failures? Comparing your path to someone else's highlight reel? Mental mastery starts with reclaiming that spotlight. You direct it. You decide what gets airtime. Because every second spent feeding doubt is a second stolen from building discipline. Elite performers don't just think positive. They think precisely. They visualize outcomes, rehearse challenges mentally, and build rituals to create clarity under pressure. You can do the same. No trophy required. One tool: visualization. Before a meeting, a workout, a hard conversation, see it in your mind. Not just the perfect version. Visualize the tension, the curveball, the nerves, and see yourself navigating it with calm, control, and clarity. That's not wishful thinking. That's mental reps. Another, anchor phrases. Simple, clear words that bring you back when your mind runs. Things like stay locked, breathe here, this moment only. Short cues that recenter you like mental reset buttons. Also, reduce input clutter. Your mind isn't a landfill. Unfollow accounts that stir envy. Turn off alerts that steal presence. Give your brain room to breathe. Silence sharpens focus. This isn't about perfection. Even the best minds wander. The difference is, they notice and return, over and over. That return is the rep. That return is the power. When you train your mind like a weapon, you stop wasting energy on what doesn't matter. You start hitting your targets, because now, you're aiming on purpose. Your mind isn't soft. It isn't broken. It's just been scattered too long. Time to sharpen it. Time to steady your breath. Time to draw the bow with intention. Because the next chapter is about silencing the internal saboteur. And trust me, that critic doesn't want you focused. It wants you flinching. But you're learning to aim. Focus is trained, not gifted. Your thoughts either sharpen or scatter your energy. Visualization and mental cues are tools to build clarity under pressure. Where is your attention leaking? And how is that costing you clarity? Today, create a one-line mental anchor. Use it every time your focus starts to drift. Chapter 3. The Inner Critic. There's a voice in your head. It comments on everything. Miss a deadline? Typical. Look in the mirror? Not good enough. Start something bold? Who do you think you are? It poses as truth, but it's a fraud, and for most people it's running the show. That voice isn't your conscience. It's not your instincts. It's the inner critic, part echo of past wounds, part fear in a cheap disguise. It sounds familiar because it's lived in your head rent-free for years. And left unchallenged, it will quietly wreck your confidence, sabotage your momentum, and drown out the voice that actually matters, your own. It didn't start malicious. That critic began as protection, a misguided attempt to keep you safe. If it could shame you out of trying, it could keep you from failing. But over time, it stopped protecting and started controlling. You began to believe it. Imagine hiring a coach who insults you daily, who tells you every weakness, mocks every goal, magnifies every mistake. Would you keep them? Fire them? Report them? And yet, many people let that exact voice narrate their lives without question. The good news? You don't have to believe everything you think. That voice may speak, but you don't have to listen. The first step is awareness. Catch it in the act. Label it. That's the critic. Giving it a name reduces its power. Now you're observing it instead of obeying it. The next step is to confront it like you would a bad coach. Ask, where's the evidence? The critic deals in assumptions, not facts. It generalizes, you always mess up. It catastrophizes, this will ruin everything. But when challenged, it often crumbles. Then, replace it. Not with toxic positivity, but with truth. If the critic says you never follow through, counter with, I've failed before, but I'm showing up now. If it says, you're not smart enough, say, I don't need to know everything. I need to keep learning. The goal isn't to lie to yourself. It's to speak to yourself like someone worth fighting for. Some people ask, but what if the critic is right? That's fear talking again. Even if there's a grain of truth, it doesn't require cruelty. Feedback can guide without tearing down. Growth doesn't need shame as fuel. You can also redirect that voice. Train it to coach, not criticize. A coach doesn't say, you suck. A coach says, here's where we need to improve. That voice can become your ally, but only if you retrain it with practice. And remember, silence is a skill. You don't have to respond to every mental notification. Thoughts come and go. You get to choose which ones stay. Like a bouncer at the door, you decide who gets into the club of your consciousness. Your inner critic won't disappear overnight. But over time, with consistency, its volume drops. And in that quiet, a new voice can rise, the one that calls you forward instead of dragging you down. That voice matters. Because the next time you face pressure, challenge, or change, your mind will default to whatever voice is strongest. Let it be the one that builds you. The critic is loud because it's scared. You're about to grow beyond its reach, and that, to it, is terrifying. Let's make it irrelevant. The inner critic is not truth, it's fear dressed as feedback. Naming, challenging, and replacing it creates mental freedom. You can retrain your inner voice to coach instead of criticize. What specific message does your inner critic repeat, and how has it shaped your choices? Write down one recent criticism from your inner voice. Then, rewrite it as if you were encouraging a friend. Chapter 4. From Reacting to Responding. Picture a Navy SEAL underwater, oxygen low, gear tangled, alarms screaming. His heart wants to panic. But he doesn't. He breathes. 1 count in, 1 count out, calm under chaos. Not because the moment isn't intense, but because he's trained for this. That training didn't make the stress disappear, it just taught him how not to drown in it. Most people live in reaction mode. A sharp email arrives, defensiveness flares. A plan changes, anxiety spikes. A criticism lands, shame explodes. It's not the situation that's the problem. It's the gap between trigger and response, or rather, the lack of one. Reacting is instant, emotional, unfiltered. It's the punchback, the retreat, the snark, the spiral. Responding is different. It's choosing, not just doing. It's stepping back for half a second, just enough to catch your breath, and decide who you want to be in that moment. This isn't about becoming robotic or emotionless. And emotions are valid. But not every emotion needs the wheel. The angry voice doesn't have to speak. The hurt part doesn't have to slam the door. You can feel it all, and still respond with wisdom. Here's where it gets practical. The key to response over reaction lies in building the pause. That sacred space between stimulus and choice. You don't need hours. You need seconds, enough to recognize the pattern and pivot. Breath is your secret weapon. Not just some yoga cliché. Biologically, deep breathing resets the nervous system. When something triggers you, your body fires into fight or flight. But 3 slow breaths? They tell your brain, we're safe. We choose how to move now. Use this sequence: pause, breathe, name, shift. Pause to interrupt the default, breathe to calm the storm. Name what's really going on. I feel dismissed. I'm afraid I'm not enough. Then shift. Ask what response would reflect strength, not just emotion. Another tool is the reset phrase, a mental cue that brings you back. Something like, lead the moment, or respond, don't react. Train it like muscle memory. When the heat rises, you already know what to do. This matters because reaction mode is exhausting. It burns energy, damages relationships, and erodes confidence. Worse, it creates regret. How many times have you said something in reaction, only to wish you could rewind? Response mode builds pride. You look back and think, I handled that with clarity. The more you train this, the more power you reclaim, not power over others, but over yourself. The ability to stand in a storm and not be moved by every gust, but to see the fire and still act like the fireman, not the flame. Some situations won't give you time, but most do. And in those moments, your training speaks. That training doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be practiced. The goal isn't never feeling triggered. That's unrealistic. The goal is becoming the kind of person who knows what to do next, especially when it counts. You don't have to be a Navy SEAL to stay calm under pressure. You just need the pause. You just need the breath. You just need to remember, this is your move, not the world's. And when you master the pause, you stop being a puppet of circumstance. You become the author of your response. The storm still rages. But you lead the weather. Reaction is automatic. Response is chosen. The pause creates power. Breath resets the brain. Training response habits builds confidence and clarity. Where in your life do you react on autopilot? And what would a better response look like? Choose a reset phrase: respond, don't react. Use it the next time you feel triggered. Chapter 5. Mental Reps. Michael Jordan didn't become great by playing games, he became great by mastering practice. Thousands of free throws, drills, breakdowns, do-overs, not glamorous. Not thrilling, just relentless repetition. Excellence, it turns out, isn't built in big moments, it's built in boring ones. The same is true for mental strength. Most people wait for a crisis to build resilience. But by then, it's too late. You don't rise to the occasion, you fall to your level of preparation. The mentally tough don't hope they'll respond well. They train until it's automatic. Mental reps are the small, repeated actions that forge your internal foundation. They don't look heroic, they won't go viral, but they shape who you become when life presses in. Start with your morning. The first few minutes of your day are like wet cement. Whatever impressions you make, they stick. Most people grab their phone, flood their brain with dopamine, comparison, and chaos. That's not neutral. That's mental sabotage. Instead, try a simple morning rep: stillness, breath, and intention. No screens. Just 3 minutes to anchor your focus. Ask, what kind of person do I want to be today? Not what tasks, what posture. Calm. Bold? Focused? Then build from there. Journaling is another powerful rep. Not the Dear Diary stuff. Use it to observe patterns, challenge thoughts, and set your mental tone. Ask questions like, what's draining me lately? Or what's one belief I need to replace? You're not just recording, you're recalibrating. Mental reps also happen in challenge. When you feel resistance, discomfort, boredom, frustration, that's a training opportunity. Instead of escaping, lean in. Hold the line a little longer. That breath you take when you want to quit? That's a rep. That moment you respond instead of react? Another rep. Tiny disciplines done consistently beat bursts of motivation. You don't need to meditate for an hour. Start with 60 seconds. You don't need a perfect mindset all day. Just win the next 5 minutes. Stack enough of those, and you become unrecognizable in the best way. The reason most people don't get mentally strong isn't because they're weak, it's because they're inconsistent. They expect mindset mastery to feel good, but mastery doesn't always feel like a breakthrough. Sometimes it feels like brushing your mental teeth. Routine. Unsexy, necessary. Discipline is freedom, not restriction. When your mind knows what to expect, when it has anchors, reps, and rituals, it doesn't have to waste energy deciding everything in the moment. That frees you to use your power where it matters most. Think of it like compound interest. One small mental rep won't change your life, but one small mental rep, every day for a year, that's transformation. That's confidence built from consistency. You're not building a fortress overnight. You're laying bricks. And every time you choose a thought on purpose, every time you pause, every time you reset, that's a brick. Eventually that wall gets high. Not to keep the world out, but to keep you steady when the world tries to shake you. Mental strength isn't magic. It's math, reps multiplied by time. And the best part, you control both. You don't need to wait for the storm to practice calm. You build calm now, one breath, one rep at a time. Mental strength is built through consistent, small disciplines. Morning routines and challenge moments are prime training grounds. Repetition, not motivation, leads to mastery. What mental habit, if done daily for 60 days, would most change how you show up? Pick one 5-minute morning habit, like focused breathing or intention setting, and do it tomorrow. Chapter 6. Fear is a liar. She almost walked off stage. The TEDx talk was moments away. Her hands shook, heart pounded, and every part of her mind screamed, "You're not ready. You'll mess this up." She wanted to bolt, but she didn't. She stepped forward, spoke her truth, and afterward, someone told her it changed their life. Fear had lied. Again. Fear isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a whisper. This won't work. They'll laugh. You're not qualified. It wears 1,000 disguises: procrastination, self-doubt, overthinking, perfectionism. But under it all? A simple lie. That danger is certain, that failure is fatal. That you can't handle what's coming. Your brain is wired for survival, not success. It's designed to detect threats, even imaginary ones. A raised eyebrow becomes rejection. A delayed reply becomes disaster. Your mind runs simulations faster than any computer, most of them ending in disaster that never happens. The problem isn't that fear shows up, it's that we believe it without questioning. Fear presents itself as fact. But it's usually a feeling, and feelings are real, but they're not always true. You'll never eliminate fear. That's not the goal. The goal is to see it, name it, and move anyway. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision that something matters more. The first step is exposure. Avoidance feeds fear. The longer you delay the conversation, the task, the risk, the bigger it grows in your mind. Face it early. Shrink it through action. Often, what felt like a dragon was just a shadow. Second, rewrite fear's script. If fear says, "What if you fail?" respond, "What if I grow?" If it says, "What if they reject you?" say, "What if the right people respect me for trying?" Flip the questions. Make fear prove itself. Also, learn to sit with fear without flinching. Most people run at the first sign of discomfort, but discomfort is data. It tells you where growth lives. Let the fear rise. Don't chase it away. Breathe into it. Watch it. Like a wave, it will crest, then pass, and what's left behind? You. Stronger, clearer. Still standing. High performers don't get rid of fear, they train around it. Athletes hear fear before big moments. Leaders feel it before hard decisions. They just don't let it drive. They've learned fear is a signpost, not a stop sign. Sometimes fear means you're doing something important. Something that stretches your identity. That's not weakness, that's evolution. When fear whispers you're not ready, it may mean you're leveling up. That's a good thing. Fear will keep talking. That's its job. Yours is to decide which voice gets the final word. And here's the secret fear doesn't want you to know: Every time you move through it, it loses credibility. Every rep through fear makes the next one easier. You build proof. You create mental receipts that say, I've done hard things before, I can do this too. So next time fear speaks, pause, smile even, thank it for its concern. Then get moving. Let your action be louder than its warnings. Because fear may have a voice, but it doesn't get a vote. Fear lies by presenting feelings as facts. Action, not avoidance, shrinks fear's power. Courage is built by facing fear, not fleeing it. What fear have you been avoiding? And what's the cost of continuing to run? Pick one small action you've been delaying due to fear. Do it today, even imperfectly. Chapter 7. Rejection Proof. He pitched his startup 148 times before anyone said yes. Each no felt like a slap. But he didn't stop. Eventually, one investor believed, then another. That startup? Sold for billions. Most people saw overnight success. What they missed were the 147 rejections that came first. Rejection hurts. It pokes the most fragile parts of us, the fear of not being enough, of being unwanted, of being exposed. It doesn't matter how strong you are. When someone says no, ignores you, or criticizes you, the sting is real. But the real danger isn't the rejection itself. It's the story you tell afterward. You get ghosted after an interview. Do you think they found someone else? Or do you think I must have said something stupid? Your date doesn't call back. Do you think, not a fit? Or I'm not lovable? The rejection stings because you hand it meaning, often, the wrong one. Your brain is wired to avoid rejection because, once upon a time, rejection meant exile. No tribe, no fire, no food. But now, a stranger's disapproval won't kill you. Still, your nervous system treats it like life or death. That's the challenge. And the opportunity. The mentally tough don't stop rejection from happening. They stop it from defining them. They understand the difference between event and identity. Rejection is data, not a diagnosis. It says something didn't align, not that you're broken. The first step to becoming rejection-proof is separating worth from outcome. You're not your job, your pitch, your post, or your performance. Those are expressions, not evidence. When you tether your identity to results, every loss becomes personal. When your identity is grounded, you can face no's without losing your center. Create identity anchors. Simple, clear truths that remind you who you are, regardless of how others respond. I'm resilient. I lead with integrity. I grow through setbacks. These aren't slogans, they're shields. You don't say them to feel good. You say them to stay grounded. Next, practice rejection. Yes, on purpose. Ask for something slightly unreasonable. Make the ask you've been avoiding. Submit the article. Send the message. Not because it'll be easy, but because repetition builds immunity. Like a vaccine, small doses of rejection prepare you for the real thing. Also, zoom out. The pain of one no shrinks when placed in the context of 10 or 100. Success isn't built on a lack of rejection, it's built on a tolerance for it. Every no gets you closer to a refined yes. Rejection doesn't just test your self-esteem, it reveals it. If a no breaks you, it means your identity was resting on approval. That's not failure. That's feedback, and feedback is fuel. You don't need to like rejection, but you can stop fearing it. When you know who you are, you can hear no without falling apart. You can move forward even when the door closes. Because rejection might bruise your ego, but it can't touch your value unless you hand it the pen. So take the no, thank it, learn from it. Then keep showing up like someone who knows they belong. That's how you become rejection-proof. Not by being immune to pain, but by being rooted in something deeper than praise. Rejection is data, not identity. Grounding your worth internally reduces fear of external judgment. Small, repeated exposures to rejection build resilience. Where have you let rejection define you, and what truth can replace that story? Make one ask today that risks rejection, small or big, do it anyway, and track what you learn. Chapter 8. Trigger Mastery. He missed the shot. Crowd roared. Cameras zoomed in. You could almost see the heat rising off his skin. But instead of lashing out, he closed his eyes, took a breath, nodded once, and jogged back on defense. The scoreboard didn't move, but something inside him did. That was control. That was mastery. Triggers are everywhere. A glance, a tone, a delay, a headline. And just like that, your stomach flips, your voice tightens, your heart rate spikes. It happens fast. Too fast. Before logic shows up, emotion hijacks the system. This isn't weakness, it's wiring. Your brain is designed to spot danger and react. But in a world where most threats are emotional, not physical, those instant reactions cause more harm than good. You snap, you spiral, you shut down. Later you ask, why did I let that get to me? Because you were triggered. And the trigger ran the show. Trigger mastery doesn't mean never feeling activated. It means noticing the trigger before it becomes a reaction. It's the split-second awareness that says, this is a pattern. I don't have to follow it. Start by identifying your common triggers. Is it being interrupted? Criticized? Ignored? Most people walk around getting emotionally sucker-punched by the same things, over and over without naming them. Awareness is the first line of defense. Next comes the pause. This isn't just a cute concept, it's a literal neurological reset. When a trigger hits, your amygdala lights up, fight, flight, or freeze kicks in. But if you pause, even for 5 seconds, you give your prefrontal cortex a chance to engage. That's the part that makes wise decisions. During that pause, breathe slow, deep, 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out. Controlled breathing lowers cortisol and signals safety. You're telling your body, we're okay, no tigers here. Now label what's really going on. Not just I'm mad. Get precise. I feel dismissed. I feel out of control. Naming emotions reduces their grip. It shifts you from being inside the storm to observing it from the outside. Then, reframe. Ask, what else could this mean? That text they didn't answer? Maybe they're overwhelmed, not avoiding you. That harsh tone? Maybe it wasn't personal. You're not excusing poor behavior. You're choosing a story that serves your peace, not steals it. Mastery isn't about never being triggered. It's about shortening the gap between the trigger and the healthy response. At first, you'll notice after the blow-up. Then you'll catch it mid-flare. Eventually, you'll feel the spark and choose not to light the match. This is emotional Aikido, redirecting the energy instead of blocking it with brute force. You don't suppress emotion. You steer it. You convert heat into clarity. That's strength. You'll still get triggered. That doesn't make you broken. It makes you human. But with practice, those triggers become less loud or less convincing. You stop reacting to every jab. You stop being owned by every slight. Because mastery isn't about avoiding fire. It's about becoming flame resistant. And when you learn to pause, to breathe, to pivot, you don't just regain your power. You remind the world, this is how strength handles chaos. Triggers activate old emotional patterns, awareness interrupts them. The pause creates space for a response instead of a reaction. Reframing and breath are tools for emotional control. What specific situation triggers you most, and what response would reflect your highest self? Next time you feel triggered, pause for 5 seconds and breathe before responding. Practice the pattern. Chapter 9. Vision over victimhood. She lost both legs in a car accident. Her athletic dreams were shattered overnight. But a year later she was back on the track, running on blades. Not because life gave her a break, but because she gave her pain a purpose. She chose vision over victimhood. And that choice changed everything. When life hits hard, the default reaction is, why me? It's natural. Pain demands answers. But sit in that question too long, and it becomes a trap, a loop. A lens that turns you into a passenger in your own life. Victimhood isn't about being hurt. It's about building your identity around it. It's the belief that because something unfair happened, you're stuck, that your past controls your future, that your power lies with what was taken from you, not what you still hold. Vision breaks that cycle. It shifts the question from why me to what now. It doesn't erase the pain, it redeems it. Vision gives struggle context. It gives wounds direction. It reminds you that you can be more than what happened to you. The problem is, vision doesn't shout, victimhood does. Victimhood gets sympathy, validation, attention. Vision demands work. It requires you to dream beyond your current circumstance. That's not easy, but it's necessary. Start with awareness. Where are you living in a victim loop? Where are you blaming circumstances, people, or timing? Not to shame yourself, but to wake up. Vision begins when you stop waiting and start choosing. Then, clarify your direction. Not a 5-year plan. Just one bold question: what do I want to build next? Not what you want to avoid. Not what hurt you. What do you want to become? That shift in focus changes your trajectory. Use visualization. See your future self handling challenges with poise. Picture the version of you who's unshaken by rejection, who leads with confidence, who lives on purpose. What would they do today? How would they think? Speak. Show up? This isn't fantasy, it's training. Athletes visualize before the play. Performers before the stage. Vision isn't pretend, it's preparation. The brain responds to imagined experience like real experience. Repetition makes it real. Also, build a morning question into your day. Who do I want to be today, no matter what happens? That sets intention before interruption. Victimhood reacts. Vision initiates. And yes, the world will still be unfair. People will still disappoint. Life won't follow your script. But vision makes you flexible, not fragile. It doesn't need perfect conditions, it creates progress in the middle of chaos. When you focus on vision, your story changes. You stop being the character things happen to. You become the author. You don't ignore the hard chapters, but you refuse to let them define the whole book. That's power. Not control over everything, but clarity over what you choose next. Victimhood says, "This broke me." Vision says, "This shaped me." One closes the door. The other kicks it open. You get to choose which voice wins. Victimhood locks you in the past. Vision pulls you into purpose. Small daily choices driven by future identity create big change. Visualization is a training tool, not a fantasy. Where have you let circumstance define you, and what vision could rewrite that story? Write down one sentence describing your future self. Let that guide one decision you make today. Chapter 10. Flow State Activation. The jazz musician closed his eyes. Fingers moved without thought. The room disappeared. No script, no stress, just rhythm. That moment? Flow. Pure, unfiltered presence, where skill meets challenge, and time bends around intention. You've tasted it before. The workout that flew by, the conversation that left you buzzing, the project you got lost in. That wasn't luck. That was flow, a mental zone where performance peaks and distractions vanish. Flow isn't accidental. It's trainable, but most people wait for it to happen instead of designing for it. They try to force creativity, focus, or execution without setting the mental stage. You don't summon flow. You step into it, deliberately. First, understand the ingredients. Flow happens when challenge meets skill. Too easy? You get bored. Too hard? You get anxious. But that sweet spot, that edge, that's where flow lives. Not comfort, not panic, stretch. Next, minimize friction. Flow hates clutter. Multitasking kills momentum. You can't enter the zone while switching tabs or checking messages. Block time. Kill notifications. Choose one mission. Give it your full mind. Then, create entry rituals. Athletes lace up the same way before every game. Writers light the same candle or start with the same sentence. These aren't quirks. They're triggers. Repetition sends a signal to your brain. It's time to lock in. Also, define your goal. Vague work invites vague focus. Flow thrives on clarity. What does success look like in the next 45 minutes? Be specific. Finish slide deck. Write 600 words. Practice pitch 3 times. Specificity creates traction. Now, eliminate exit ramps. Flow resists interruption. Every ping, every glance at the clock, every detour drags you out of the zone. Set a timer. Let others know your head's down. Create space where your brain doesn't need to toggle, it just needs to tune in. Another key is emotional alignment. Flow isn't forced through pressure, it's allowed through engagement. Choose work that excites you, or at least work you can connect to purpose. Ask, what does this task lead to? Tie the now to the meaningful later. And remember, flow isn't just for creatives or athletes. You can enter flow doing spreadsheets, solving problems, coaching teams. It's not the task, it's how you approach it. Full attention. Clear intent, deep engagement. When flow clicks in, time distorts. Minutes become hours. Doubt fades. You stop judging yourself mid-action. The inner critic gets benched. You're too busy doing the thing to think about how you're doing. That state isn't just productive, it's healing. Flow reduces stress, boosts mood, and increases fulfillment. It reminds you what your brain is capable of when freed from noise. But it takes practice. Most people are so used to constant interruption they feel uncomfortable with deep focus. That's okay. Like any skill, flow sharpens with reps. Protect one pocket of time, each day. Make it sacred. No pings, no multitasking, just presence. Over time, you'll find that zone faster. Megipu. Stay there longer. And do better work with less effort. Not because you hustled harder. Because you aligned deeper. Flow isn't magic. It's method. And once you master the method, you'll wonder how you ever worked any other way. Because when you find your zone, you find your power. Flow is where challenge meets skill and full engagement. Rituals, clarity, and focused blocks of time increase flow frequency. Flow isn't a mood, it's a muscle you build through design. What environment or activity helps you lose track of time, and how can you design for that more often? Block 45 distraction-free minutes this week. Choose one meaningful task. Create a ritual. Enter your zone. Chapter 11. The Warrior's Mindset. The fire was everywhere. Trees collapsed, smoke thickened, radios cut out. A wildland firefighter, barely visible through the haze, moved with calm precision. No panic, no wasted motion. He had trained for this moment, not to avoid fear, but to function through it. That's the warrior's mindset. Not bravado, preparation. Most people think warriors are fearless. They're not. They've just rehearsed chaos so many times it doesn't catch them off guard. Pressure doesn't make them collapse, it activates what they've built. You don't need to wear a uniform to live this way. The warrior's mindset isn't about physical combat. It's about mental conditioning. It's how you respond when life tests you, not in theory, in heat. Life will press you. Uncertainty, loss, disappointment, they're coming, if they haven't already. And when they hit, you won't rise to the occasion. You'll default to your training. So the question becomes, what are you training right now? Warriors rehearse adversity. Not to be pessimistic, but to be prepared. They visualize worst-case scenarios and see themselves navigating them with poise. They expose themselves to discomfort on purpose, not because they enjoy it, but because they refuse to be strangers to struggle. You can train the same way. Start small. Take cold showers. Hold the plank a little longer. Choose the hard conversation. Lean into boredom instead of escaping it. These aren't challenges for the sake of suffering. They're opportunities to increase your tolerance for tension. Because comfort is overrated, it creates softness, and softness collapses under pressure. You don't need to live in constant struggle, but you do need to stretch your edge often enough to keep it sharp. Grit isn't just persistence, it's endurance with purpose. It's showing up after the rush is gone. It's sticking to your word when no one's watching. It's finding your center in the middle of noise. Mental toughness isn't shouting affirmations into a mirror. It's doing the thing you said you'd do after the motivation fades. Warriors don't need hype. They need truth, and their truth is action. You build this mindset by embracing inconvenience. Not every time, but often enough that your mind learns resilience is the standard, not the exception. Also limit the drama. Warriors don't waste energy on what they can't control. They narrow their focus to the mission. The next breath. The next step. They strip things down to what matters and move forward with discipline. You won't always feel ready. That's not the point. Readiness is a byproduct of repetition. Confidence comes from action, not the other way around. When you move through fear, through fatigue, through resistance, that's when belief is built. The warrior doesn't wait for calm to act calm. He becomes calm by choosing presence in chaos. And presence isn't something you find, it's something you forge. Whatever you're facing right now, stress, setback, doubt, it's your training ground. You don't need to escape it. You need to engage it. Show up. Breathe deep. Lock eyes with it. And move forward like someone who's been here before. Because soon you will be. The warrior's mindset is built through exposure to discomfort and intentional preparation. Grit is less about hype, more about habits and quiet consistency. Pressure reveals training. Train now for the challenges ahead. What discomfort are you avoiding? And what would change if you saw it as training? Choose one small act of intentional discomfort this week. Do it not to suffer, but to strengthen your edge. Chapter 12. Victory Within. The summit was quiet. No crowd, no confetti, just breathless air and endless sky. The climber stood alone, snow crunching beneath his boots. He didn't cheer. He didn't cry. He just smiled, because he knew the victory wasn't reaching the top. It was becoming the kind of person who could. Transformation doesn't come with fanfare. It sneaks up in small moments. The pause before reacting. The breath before speaking. The decision to try again when it would be easier not to. These are the signs of victory, not external applause, but internal shift. The real win is invisible. It happens the moment you no longer need perfect conditions to be your best. The moment you stop outsourcing your power to circumstance. The moment you choose to show up rooted, regardless of what's shaking around you. That's what this journey has been about. Not hype, not hacks. Mastery, mental edge. The quiet confidence that says, I know who I am, I know how I respond, and I know what I'm building. You've trained through fire, fear, rejection, doubt. You've sharpened your focus, silenced the critic, slowed your reactions. You've practiced vision, you've built grit, you've learned to stand still when the world spins. Now comes the most important step, integration. Insight without action fades. Change without repetition reverses. The mental edge isn't a switch you flip, it's a standard you keep. It lives in your choices, not your intentions. That's why rituals matter. Simple, repeatable habits that anchor your mindset. Morning check-ins, evening reviews, midday resets. These aren't extras. They're how you remind yourself of who you've become. And that identity? It's everything. Not I want to be disciplined. Not I try to be resilient. But I am someone who leads their mind. This isn't about pretending. It's about reinforcing. Every action you take is a vote for the person you choose to be. You'll still get tested. Triggers will show up. Fear will whisper. But you're different now. Not because you're immune, but because you're trained. You know how to pause. You know how to pivot. You know how to anchor. And more than anything, you know this truth. The mind, when mastered, becomes your greatest ally. Not perfect, not silent, but sharp, clear, disciplined. You don't need to chase motivation anymore. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You've already done the hardest work, reclaiming your focus, your breath, your story. That's victory. Not winning every day, but walking through each day like someone who's already won inside. You've earned this edge. Keep it, guard it, sharpen it. Because from now on, the outside world isn't the test. It's just the arena. You already passed the test that mattered most, the one within. Lasting transformation is identity-driven, not event-driven. Rituals and repetition solidify your mental edge. The true win is becoming the person who leads their mind daily. What one identity statement will guide you as you continue building the mental edge? Write your own mental edge manifesto in one sentence. Post it where you'll see it daily. Live it forward. Take care and be well.